It's the first time that I am presenting in such a huge event, so I'm very nervous. I would like to begin the last presentation, the last session of TechFirst 2022. Hello, I am Lee Jun-soo. I titled my presentation, Visualizing Test Automation with ELK and Grafana. In this session, I'd like to talk about test monitoring, which is one of the limitations of test automation. And I'd like to talk about my experience. In your organizations, do you also have test automation? Or are you interested in it and are you developing test automation? In my session, I'm going to talk about test automation most frequently. So that's why I threw this question at you. This session is probably of interest to people who are taking interest in test automation or organizations who want to improve test automation. If that is the case, are you looking at the test results only in a log format? Are you waiting for the test solutions to produce simple and boring report pages? QA engineers are busy developing test automation, so they just depend on the test solution and sometimes they don't put too much meaning on the results. They must have put in a lot of resources to automate the test, but even that is the case, when they share the results, they just produce simple and boring looking tables. But we don't know the status of the test progress. We don't know where the test is headed and when the test will be over. Of course, if you keep doing the test over and over, then you will have accumulated some type of experience and you will have a feel for where the test is passing through and when it will be over. Once test automation begins, we just have nothing to do but to wait. But if you do not like the waiting part, then you just depend on the test solution and you press refresh, and then you can find out which test case it is passing through. But haven't you ever thought how mundane such test automation is? I am developing and operating test automation, and it felt frustrating to just depend on the test solution and to just receive results. So I started on a project that looked simple but was essential. I wanted to do a visualization of the test automation, and I'd like to talk about that. But before that, I would like to introduce myself first. I joined Line Plus Q team in December last year. I'm Lee Jun-soo and I'm a QA engineer. I'm in charge of Line Desktop Service at Line Plus. Within the team, I am in charge of the technology field for establishing and developing test automation environment. I've been working as a QA engineer and developer for about 10 years, so I began to take interest in BDD-based test automation. I have been interested in test automation development and building the environment for service monitoring. And I have been doing a lot of research and I spend a lot of time applying that research to practice. And I'm also an avid coffee drinker, and I'm also enjoying my hobby as a desk interior decoration. With this, I would now like to go over the agenda. I'm going to talk about these 5 topics. First, I'm going to give you an overview of the project. And then I'd like to talk about the issues of the previous test automation environment. And then I'd like to talk about the actions taken during the project. And then I'll talk about what has been improved throughout the project and how this project was expanded. To reiterate, My session will be of interest to developers or QA engineers who are interested in or are developing test automation. And if you already have test automation in your organization, it would be helpful to those people who want to improve test automation. I would like to simply talk about the project deliverables. First of all, the overall architecture is built this way. I used many open source tools to design the overall pipeline, and there are test status that are created throughout the test, and they could be delivered through alerts. And I used Grafana dashboard so that I visualized the test information to enhance readability and enabled real-time monitoring as well. And by using Grafana and Jenkins, I delivered the events throughout the test through Slack, and anyone can share the test status through the Slack messages. And now I'd like to talk about the issues that I felt when I joined the organization in 2021. I joined my team, the Q team, in 2021. Last year and even now, our organization is in charge of many services, too many indeed for a size for a team like our size. Line Desktop, Global Live Platform in Taiwan, and Line Avatar, and Gallery in Line application. These are the services that we take care of. The services, when they meet users, we didn't want them to have a bad user experience, so we are working hard. And we're also operating test automation to provide better services. One service is composed of many test automation jobs. And we have the regression test, which has many test cases and are used for regression test. And we also have the quick test job that can test the important functions that take shorter time than regression. And we also have the broadcast test job to test the schemes that only work on the applications. And if the tests are there needed for each service, then we will create and operate more test jobs. So for one service, we have many pieces of test automation. So in a day, we get a lot of emails. And one day, I found out that my inbox was full of test automation report mails that went unread. And I felt sorry to the developers who developed the test automation because they worked hard to write up these report mails. Every morning, they check whether the test applications are there or not, whether they're built, and then they do the maintenance on the test jobs, and they develop and operate the test codes to stabilize test apps. And to analyze the test automation results, they write up these mails on a daily basis. But despite their efforts, we don't even open the mails. And if we do not show any response, then the developers will not feel rewarded at all. But to just give you an excuse, I get these types of mails, so many of them, so I tend to miss out on these. And we are responsible for the quality of so many services. And so there's a need to be able to look at the test progress and the results in a single view. While operating many services, if we could monitor in a very readable format the results of automation and the progress status, well, this is a very simple requirement. But test automation was not ready for this type because the developers had to just send emails about the test status. So the cost for operating test automation continued to increase, but the valuable output was decreasing. That is why we decided to embark on a project. And now I'd like to talk about the actions taken during the project. We selected a total of 4 action items. One was to construct the ELK pipeline. We wanted to use the ELK Stack. By ELK Stack, it means the open source tool to collect and analyze the logs. I'm sure in the services that you're using, there is a tool chain that is used for analysis to collect the logs and to improve for a better service. And second action item was to define the log fields to decide which log fields to use. And this was needed because we want to show more meaningful results when you make up the dashboard. And then develop the actual logger that you can actually record the log fields. When the test automation is activated, you have this function of producing the necessary information. And the last action item is to create a dashboard that can visualize all the results in a single view. It uses many charts and graphs to organize huge set of test data. But there must be a reason to select such action item. There must be a rationale. So what was the decision criteria? We focused on the following 3 points. One, we wanted to use the open source tool chain to gain reliability and flexibility. In the case of open source, many developers have trust in the tool itself, and because of the requirements of many developers, we also expected that it could develop into various formats. And the biggest merit of open source is cost saving. And second, armed with flexibility, the logging platform could produce synergy with different types of test automation. In line, through many test solutions, test codes are developed and operated. Under such circumstances, different types of logs produced without much resource input could become the logging platform of our choice. And lastly, when a service is added, it needed to be easily scalable. And I think that is the strength of a common platform. When you want to implement new service test automation, this is needed. And I thought this could produce synergy from many test services and formats.
So we decided to build the pipeline or the logging platform through ELK Stack. So I think there must be people who are not familiar with ELK Stack, so I'd like to give a brief introduction. ELK is a tool chain that is used to collect and use information from services and projects real time. Elasticsearch stands for E, which is an engine that is used for search and analysis. And Elasticsearch stands for E, which refines the data from many sources and that is sent to Logstash, so that stands for L. And lastly, Kibana is used to visualize the data into charts and graphs. So we call this ELK. This is an acronym of these 3 products, and this is explained in the Elastic official homepage. So with ELK Stack, we had loaded the data from test automation on Elasticsearch, and we have created a pipeline for that. We placed the file beats at the front end of the Logstash to give easier access to logs. So we call this logging pipeline Heimdall. As you are well aware, Heimdall is the name of a Nordic god. Heimdall calls the Bifrost. The scattered logs are gathered at one place. To do so, we are working on this. So we call this Heimdall. So let's have a look at the overall structure of Heimdall. Heimdall connects the node file beats, and Logstash Elasticsearch to cover the whole process. With test automation, the logs generated from multiple nodes are forwarded to Logstash through FileBeat, and Logstash sorts out unnecessary data and refines the data. And the refined log data is loaded on Elasticsearch, and the logs can be searched. So with the logging platform, now we have to serve something. The logs needed a process to decide which information or data should be defined, printed, and forwarded. This log contains meaningful information and form the foundation for creating a dashboard. So we have put a lot of thought in this. And as you can see from here, we defined a log field so that details such as test application information, test case information, and device information can be printed. So we have created this log field and defined it, and we have about 20 log fields defined. And next is to print the logs that I have introduced in the slide. So this is to develop a logger. Logger may be unfamiliar to you, so I will give a brief introduction again. Logger is a tool that helps the events generated by code execution record messages. The services that we often use logs many information through loggers, and developers try to find out what are the problems by using this when the problems are based on logs. And the test solutions that we have been operating had a very weak logging function. The default logs could not be leveraged, and we could not get help from the external library. So we decided to develop a logger that is right for the test solution. So we developed this logger, and we call this the action log script. This acquires and prints the message that we intended and we want. As you can see from here, when the event or application are executed or ended, and when elements are clicked, and when events are executed, the loggings can be conducted. All events and logs are capsulated into a single action log script file. As I have mentioned before, we have developed the logger, and we decided what kind of contents will be printed by using the logger. So using the Elasticsearch, we could load that, and that had been made possible. So the last step is to create a dashboard. So we need a tool to create a dashboard. I have selected open source tool, and that was the Grafana. Grafana is an open source tool that visualizes metric analysis. And this is used to connect data source such as Elasticsearch and MySQL. By querying the connected data, this tool visualizes the data in the desired format. And Grafana can be connected to any data. And based on the data, dashboard can be modified and created easily. So it has this high level of flexibility, and it serves general purposes. So I thought that this was a very good tool that could enable the things that we would like to achieve. And based on the pipeline that we have built, tests are run, and the logs that were generated were served and loaded on Elasticsearch. Grafana queries to Elasticsearch and retrieve the data that we wanted. And based on this data, we could visualize charts or graphs, and these were combined to create a single dashboard. and we could create the panels, and the test device names and the app versions could be displayed. And the success and failure cases could be displayed as well. And we could create a single dashboard. So this screen is the dashboard that is running in our real operation. By checking the test result, anyone can see the test progress in an intuitive way, and the last test result can also be checked. So, based on what I have mentioned before, we have run a pilot test and we could see remarkable improvements. So, I would like to touch upon that briefly. First, anyone can check the test progress real time, whether the test has begun or which test case is running can be checked. So, anyone can see the test progress, and this is the feature that was most needed. And improving on this feature is in itself a significant achievement. Second, by using Grafana dashboard, test results and progress are visualized and we get a bird's eye view. The existing text-based reports are now provided in a single dashboard format. So anybody can read the outcome and the result easily. Last but not least, the developers who are involved in test automation can focus solely on development. In the past, developers had to email the daily test results, which was a very cumbersome task and a boring task, but they no longer had to do this. And they could focus on the automation test, and the unnecessary costs can be reduced. So we improved upon this automation, test automation environment, and we became more ambitious. We wanted to automate the beginning and the end of the tests entirely. Then we could upgrade the environment, which was confined to test automation, and could expand into the automation test as well. So we acted upon this. So I would like to talk upon what kind of expansion we have made. First, we installed Jenkins, and the Jenkins covered the test automation pre-processing. Jenkins is a tool that automates build and deployment, and the steps involved in build and deployments can be managed by this CI/CD tool. So Jenkins, we use Jenkins to create triggers that could start the test automation. Every morning, we check the new versions in the deployment system, and when there is a new version, the regression tests was made available against the application, and then the downloads and installation steps were configured accordingly, and the test automation regression jobs were executed, and these were all shared with Slack, and the results were shared through Slack. So the reliability on the test builds were provided. So we have automated the whole process. So the existing method, which was simply test automation, could be expanded into automation test. The QA engineers develop the test code and push it to GitHub, and then Jenkins executes the test job, and then it goes through the pipeline and is served to Elastic. Then, based on the data served, the Grafana's dashboard is completed. Anybody can use Slack to be sure of the test progress, and by using the Grafana dashboard, they can see the visualized result. and developers, QA engineers, and anybody can access the whole test progress and the test results through Slack. So I have explained how we have visualized the test automation for our organization and how we have raised the efficiency. The test automation field does not have many references. So even if there is an initial interest, the interest often wanes. However, I hope that through this session, you could be more interested in test automation. Or I hope that someone could think that this is a very feasible approach. Then I would feel very happy. As we speak, many QA engineers are working very hard. I'm rooting for them. And also, I'd like to thank the contributors who have helped me for this session. First is Mr. Chu Pukai from Line Fukuoka, and the other is Mr. Yun Song-yong from Line Service Test Team. They have developed the test automation code, and they are operating the code. Of course, for this improvement project, the pipeline has been newly established, and they have provided a lot of help for me. So I would like to express my thanks to them. And with that, my talk is concluded. But I would like to thank everyone for listening to my presentation. This was the last session of Tech First 2022, and I would like to thank everyone for your participation.
Thank you very much. We will now proceed with the plus talk. We will take questions from the audience and also from the interviewer. If you have a question, please use the question mark on the bottom right of your screen. You press the question mark and post your questions there. We have from Line Fukuoka, Hiroaki Ozono is going to conduct the plus talk. Hello, I am Ozono from Line Fukuoka. Thank you very much for your wonderful talk. I am with the SET team. We are doing test automation, so your talk was quite interesting. Thank you very much. Mr. Ozono, having listened to the presentation, were there any questions that you had? Yes, any details or anything I needed clarification on, I would like to ask. First, in Grafana, you send alerts through the Slack, and that's what you showed in the architecture. So what is the method of collection and what is the type of alerts? Usually, we go through the alerts that go through Grafana, and when there's success or failure, we send that type of alert. For example, we set a threshold value, and if there's a failure exceeding that or success exceeding that threshold, then that result is fed. Of course, we could customize the alerts telling the quality of the service level also.
Well, thank you very much. In Jenkins could send notice. Then when Grafana has a threshold, the test numbers can be customized. So I think that's a very good idea. Next question. Can you hear me? When we say it's an automation test, there are many tools and ways to print the logs. I think printing the log would be different depending on the teams and the persons in charge. For example, our team's log writing method would be different from yours. Let's say if we are going to load your team's data, then maybe we have to prepare something. What kind of things do we have to prepare? I don't think we need a complicated process. But then there is an action script for logging, so I think we have to add that. And the event repository could be replaced and used, so I think that can cover most of the process. But sending data using logging pipeline, it is a standard. We can add comments while we deliver it. So I think the format doesn't matter.
Thank you very much. It must be highly scalable to many teams you can send through this system. CI/CD, let's say it's attached to Jenkins and you can use it for other automation purposes. Let's say the logging system itself or for the action script. Is there anything that you want to improve? Well, for now, it's not being used much in the test environment, but through convergence with many solutions, whatever log could be collected. The action log script will be developed in the future, and after that, merging with Grafana will not be ELK, but we want to build another pipeline that is on our wish list.
Yes, I think that's a great concept. So I think there are people who are not well leveraging the automation test, so they would like to improve on that. So I think they would have shared your idea. So what were the biggest challenges in creating the logging system? So I have joined Line, and just a moment later, I had been involved in this development process. So finding the flow and identifying and understanding the business flow was the most challenging for me. Of course, we have to think about the other services and references regarding technology, but there are a lot of them, so that part was not that difficult.
Thank you very much. I have a lot of expectations going forward. I don't have any more questions. We will now take questions from the audience. We have several. Mr. Ozono, would you like to pick a question that you want answers to? Where do I look up the questions from the audience? Please stand by. I think you can see the questions now. Yes. Do I read them out? Yes, you can select the question of your choice or what you are interested in. Because of front end, side B, and log stats were used, any reason why you chose 8-bit and log stats? File bit and log stat? Any reason why you selected that? File bit and log stats. I used to, well, we have the method of using Elast, but I use FileBit because I wanted stable log collection from all nodes. So FileBit was installed on all the nodes. Actually, in many test automation cases, there could be irregular variables that occur, and we want to block them. And when the test is taking place, we wanted to capture all the data through Elast, and that's why we had the 8 file bit. Thank you.
So, what kind of factor was there? Or do you mean that that factor added to instability? Yes. In test automation, there is high dependency on external test solution, and the automation test environment for each organization would run into problems because of network problems. So, in order to prevent that from happening, we use the file beat to avoid any problems in other infrastructure to catch the node.
To raise certainty, you chose file beat. Okay, thank you. One other question I'd like to pose. When the test fails, you should also be able to see the error. And can you make the correlation between the error and the test failure? Right now, it is not actually implemented, but you could do it manually, collect the logs, and try to identify the cause. But in the test solution, the events are provided, and then we do the logging. So we take the log and try to track the issues. So I think going forward, this is an area that we can make improvement in.
So that's very interesting. So the automation test log and the server loads is hard to connect. But then with this solution, I think everybody would be very much interested if that becomes a universal solution.